One quick housekeeping note before we do that, we are recording this webinar, so just note that. Please keep yourself muted until we get to the Q&A portion. If you do have questions, we are going to have plenty of time for questions once we go through this presentation, but feel free to drop those into the Q&A function as well. We'll address them when we get there. This webinar will be posted on our YouTube channel, so you will be able to share it out and review it afterwards. I'm Jess Delfiaco. I'm the Communications Manager for the Midwest Climate Adaptation Science Center, or the CASC, as you'll hear it referred to. And before we dive into things, I'm just going to let my colleagues introduce themselves. Maybe Alyssa, do you want to go first?
Thanks, Jess. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Alyssa Welch. I am the program manager for the Midwest CASC. I am based at the host university for the CASC, which is University of Minnesota, here in the Twin Cities. And I'll pass it over to Rob.
Bonjour, good morning. My name is Rob Kroll. I'm the Climate Change Program Coordinator for the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission. GLFWC is one of the consortium members on the Midwest CASC, and I'm on the consortium leadership team, and I helped develop the proposal for this opportunity. I'll pass it to Kim.
Hi, everybody. Kim Hall with the Nature Conservancy. I'm a climate adaptation specialist based in Michigan and also have contributed to the design of this effort. Glad to have you here.
Great. Thanks, everybody. So a quick overview of what we are going to touch on today. I'm going to share a little bit of background about the Midwest CASC. Some of this might be very familiar to some of you, but I do see a few new faces on the call. So just a little bit about who we are and what our mission is. Of course, we're going to go over the Small Research Project's opportunity, and then Alyssa will do a little deeper dive into the review process, how to submit a scope of work, and the timeline that we're looking at. And then, as I said, we will have a big chunk of time for questions from you, and we'll address some of the questions that you shared with us in advance as well. So the Midwest Climate Adaptation Science Center is a partnership between the United States Geological Survey and a consortium of institutions here in the Midwest, which you can see on this map. And our mission is to deliver science to help fish, wildlife, water, land, and people adapt to a changing climate. We accomplish this in several ways, including by conducting and funding research on topics relevant to our regional priorities, supporting a network of graduate students and postdoctoral fellows in our region, and hosting capacity building workshops, as well as an annual gathering of our community each summer. The Midwest CASC is hosted by the University of Minnesota. As Alyssa mentioned, that's where she and I are based. You can see the rest of the University of Minnesota team on this slide. We also have a leadership team made up of representatives of every institutional member of the CASC, which you can see on this slide. And any of these people from University of Minnesota, or maybe you are a member of one of the institutions represented here, these are kind of key contacts for you to reach out to if you have questions about the CASC in general or about this opportunity. Let's see, I'm going to move to the next slide. I'll talk a little bit more about the motivations for small research project funding opportunity in just a moment, but I wanted to give you a little bit of background on our existing tribal-focused research and engagement here at the Midwest CASC. As you saw on the previous slide, we have representation from the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission and the College of Menominee Nation on our leadership team. So they're bringing in tribal perspectives to the table, as well as experience in collaborative research that serves tribal priorities, such as GLFWC's Tribal Adaptation Menu. And we support projects that are done in collaboration with tribal partners and that are serving tribal interests. These include a new synthesis research project focused on traditional ecological knowledge and climate adaptation, based here at the University of Minnesota, as well as several USGS-funded research projects based around the region. One that I'll just point out to you all is the University of Minnesota project focused on investigating climate effects on Monoman watersheds. Those research questions were shaped with tribal partners and co-PIs, as well as partners from Lac du Flambeau and Fond du Lac bands, and the 1854 Treaty Authority. Lastly, just pointing out some key personnel who are kind of key folks facilitating tribal engagement for the Midwest CASC. That's Mike Dockery, our tribal relations lead at the University of Minnesota, as well as Sarah Smith and Allie Scott, who are Bureau of Indian Affairs Tribal Climate Resilience Liaisons based at the College of Menominee Nation. Next slide. Here we are. What you all are here for is to learn more about our new small research projects opportunity. So this is funding for activities that have high potential to help inspire or promote collaborative, decision-relevant research projects now or in the future. Current SRP funding will be directed to projects and teams that are led by or include tribal partners, or that address adaptation issues of direct concern to tribal entities in the Midwest. So, in other words, these projects should advance adaptation concerns related to tribal nations or center Indigenous knowledge and its application in natural resource management across the region. The reason we are launching this activity is in part in response to feedback that we've gotten over the last few years since the Midwest CASC launched, about the importance of the pace of and the importance of relationship building in this space, especially with tribal entities. So we recognize that there are barriers related to finding time and funding to get ideas off the ground and jumpstart those strong relationships that are needed for collaborative research. So this is something of an experiment. And this is the first iteration of this activity. So we are kind of excited to see how it goes, but we may not have, every answer to everything figured out in this first round. I'll hand things over to Alyssa, but also ask my co-hosts here if there's anything they want to add before we dive into kind of the nitty-gritty of SRPs. No? All right, Alyssa, take it away.
Thanks, Jess. Appreciate it. All right. So, Jess mentioned that we are seeking scopes of work for activities that can inspire or promote collaborative decision, relevant research projects. So what types of activities are those, you ask? On this slide and then on the guidance material as well, we've brainstormed internally a short list of what we think those types of activities could be. That's everything from initial project scoping and data generation, demonstration projects, listening exchanges, field visits or workshops, and the travel to get you there, to get other people there, get collaborators there, anything that kind of builds a relationship between partners in the Midwest around tribal adaptation and natural resource management issues. We will be looking for activities that result in things that look like, it could be, yes, I hosted a workshop. Yes, we did a listening exchange, and here were the notes that came out of this. It could be, we've taken these notes and we've put a little bit more time in it, and we've made a tool that can help inform decision-making on this topic in a next step, not just for us, but maybe for others in the region. So we want to think about these projects in terms of kind of what they can lead to. So I challenge you to be creative in how you're thinking about those pieces. Remembering that, again, our Midwest CASC focus is to support, and I don't have it in front of me, people, planet, Jess, you know it better than me. The directive to support people and natural resources across the region, and how those decisions are made for future adaptation concerns. Individual projects will be funded up to $15,000 in this round. Don't feel like you need to hit that $15,000. If you want to propose something that's $5,000, if you want to propose something that's $2,000, take a look at the guidance on what those eligible expenses can be, and propose what makes sense for you and your partners. I want to also take a moment, I guess, on this slide before we move on to mention what we think this opportunity is not. So this opportunity is not related or tied to the USGS solicitation that comes out annually for the Midwest CASC. That is funded by USGS. They make those funding decisions, and that is an entirely separate process. This is something that we, as the consortium side of the cooperative agreement, have proposed to launch here as an activity. And I just want to be clear that there is a separation between those two processes. If you have questions about that, feel free to ask. This is also, in our mind, not an outlet for a fully baked research project that's looking for a tribal partner to check a box. We want to be clear that the types of activities that this opportunity is meant to support are collaborative in nature, that reflect Midwest CASC science priorities, and we'll go into that in a few minutes, and that they advance tribal adaptation issues and natural resource management in the region. So if you are looking for a partner to create a body of work with, perfect. If you are a tribal entity that has an idea that's been forming, and since you have lead on the project, you want to propose that, perfect. But this is not meant to kind of check a box to create a connection in that way. We're looking for deeper connections. So, all right, next slide. All right, one of the ways that the centering is reflected is through the eligibility. So the projects must have a lead or a co-lead from a tribal organization, government, college, university, intergovernmental agency that has natural resource interests in the Midwest. That may mean that you are currently located in the Midwest. That may mean that you have a historical presence and a cultural presence in the Midwest. And so those things might look different depending on what your situation is. The projects must also have a project lead or co-lead or team member that's affiliated with a Midwest CASC Consortium member. So reflect back on that map that Jess showed earlier on about where we are located in the region, the listing of those entities here. And we encourage this kind of partnering to, again, help build those connections across the region to support, again, more longer-term relationship growth between our partners regionally. We've mentioned this several times now, projects must be relevant to science priorities and adaptation issues or concerns for tribes. Next slide, please. Thanks, Jess. So the Midwest CASC science priorities. This list and schematic here can be found on our website as a reference point. And we call it out here because there was a lot of work done at the Midwest CASC and with partners across the region and through listening sessions about kind of what the 5 main buckets of issues that are most relevant to the Midwest related to adaptation are. These are kind of our guiding priorities, and you can dive into much more detail on our website going to that link. But these are kind of how they generally fall out. So heavy precipitation events and drought, loss of winter, altered hydrological regimes, novel terrestrial landscapes, and barriers to and opportunities for adaptation. There's more information online, again, about what that might mean. We are looking for a link in what is submitted in your scope of work to one of these. That way, we are growing our research community and our partnering community together around these 5 issues. Next slide, please. Okay, the process. Just mentioned this is a little bit of an experiment. Yes, it is. Here's what we're thinking, that for this first year of funding, so kind of from our launch time frame, which I think was earlier in September, for the next 12 months, submissions will be accepted on a rolling basis. This is important because we structured this opportunity in a way that we hope will be a little bit more nimble, both in how you are able to create a scope of work to submit and how we're able to process it as well. This is not a big grant opportunity. We understand that a lot of organizations don't have the resources and capacity to do a big grant proposal. This is meant to be smaller, more nimble, and also more flexible in terms of deadlines. So we will be reviewing the scopes of work as they come in, and they'll be accepted on a rolling basis here. We expect that successful projects will be notified within 60 days of submission. You will at least get something from us within those 60 days. I expect and hope that that will be the case, that we will be able to say, yes, awesome, let's figure out, sign the paperwork, good to go within those 60 days. And we will do our best to make that happen. Again, trying to be nimble and responsive to the organizations that are submitting scopes of work. When funding for the year has been nearly allocated out, or when we're going to suspend reviews of new scopes of work coming in, we'll post that on our website. Jess, maybe you could throw in the chat the link to where this information will live on our website. And that'll be kind of your go-to page there. Thank you for staying informed on what's going on. This is not meant to be a competitive process. We're hopeful that the scopes of work that are submitted are going to meet the guidelines, meet the goals of the opportunity, and we will work with you to help make that happen to an extent. So feel free to pitch an idea. And we want these to be successful. We want these to get moving, assuming that they, again, are in line with the vision for what this opportunity is. Again, an additional note on scope of work format. I already mentioned that we're looking to this format as a way to be more nimble. It's a Google form. If you have trouble accessing a Google form through your computer, let us know, and we can make accommodations for that. It's a Google form application that we hope is fairly straightforward. And then we will need, if your scope of work moves forward after it's reviewed, to get a little bit more detail on a budget table for our own internal purposes. But we're hoping that this, again, reduces some of the challenges that organizations might have to creating big whopping proposals and big whopping budgets. Still all needs to be, again, in line with what we're looking for the project. A last note here on process. We do have a couple years of funding for this opportunity. The first year will have more funding available than some of the later years of our project. And those later years may have slightly different guidance too, depending on the responses that we get back. And I think I'm looking forward to hearing your responses as well, your feedback to this process. And there is a possibility that that can be refined as we move forward to make it as applicable as possible. All right, next slide. Please. Thank you. The review criteria. So we'll have a, once your scope of work is received, we'll have a small review committee of staff and affiliates take a look at that and review it against the guidelines and goals that we've laid out for you. Some of those include alignment with our Midwest CASC science priorities, the role that the tribal government, intergovernmental agency, college, university, or community plays in the project. The identification of deliverables, the plans to foster relationships in a meaningful way. I can keep reading here. Plans for dissemination and sharing the findings beyond your group of partners. Feasibility of the project within the timeline and budget, and relevance and strength of the project to jumpstart additional action. We suggest that the project have a 12-month, no longer than a 12-month timeline. And again, the high end of the scope of work will be $15,000 for this first round. Thanks, Jess. We've reached the end. Jess, do you want to talk a minute about other communication outlets here, and then we can go into some Q&A?
Sure. So the link I dropped in the chat is going to be, as Alyssa said, your go-to spot for any updates or information about this particular opportunity. But you can engage more broadly with the Midwest CASC through our monthly newsletter, which you can sign up to at that link that has additional funding opportunities from us and other folks in it, as well as following us on social media, checking out our website. And then once a month, we have virtual science seminars on the fourth Monday of every month to highlight work being done around our region. Yeah, and then reach out to any of us directly as well. I mean, we'll go into Q&A here, so please ask any questions you might have. But I know things come up later down the line, so please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us for a conversation.
And before we go into that Q&A, Kim or Rob, is there anything that Jess and I didn't go over in enough detail that you'd like to add at this point?
Sounded good to me.
It was good. I'll just add a couple things quickly. So one of our science priorities is barriers to or opportunities for adaptation. And we're in the consortium are looking at this opportunity as one way for us to address some of those barriers and create opportunities. It's often difficult for tribes to respond to some of the bigger funding opportunities that are out there because of a lack of capacity and lack of time and lack of people. This is possibly one way to help address that. And the other thing that we're hoping to cut back on or eliminate are all of the proposals that come to me and to some other folks that say, hey, I have this really great proposal. Look, it's all done and it's wonderful. And I think I can get funded better if I have a tribal partner. And this is really kind of our response to that is you need to build that relationship first before you even put a pen to paper to start writing on a proposal. And hopefully this is a way to jumpstart those relationships. That's all I'll say for now. Thanks.
Great clarifications. Thanks, Rob.
Okay, so we had a few questions that you all submitted ahead of this webinar. A few of those we've pulled out here, which maybe, Alyssa, if you want to kick us off talking about unallowable expenses, feel free to raise your hand if you want to ask your question directly, put it in the Q&A, and then we'll address it there. Yeah, I'm also going to stop recording at this point, so we won't record this portion of the presentation.
Great, thanks, Jess.